What is going on, everybody? Back again today to bring you my thoughts and my review on Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2. Now, I already did a trailer review video for this for Part 2, so I'm not going to show the trailer. Um, if you're watching this video, I assume you know what the hell I'm talking about. If not, go check it out. Do some research. Masters of the Universe Revelation. There's 10 episodes total. It was released in two parts, 5 episodes each, and now the whole thing is out. So uh, over this Thanksgiving holiday, I watched it all, and I was not at home. I was out of town for Thanksgiving, so I didn't really have my computer and whatnot to make videos. So I know this is kind of a late video. I'm late to the game, like I kind of always am, but it is what it is, I guess. So Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2. So with this Part 2, I decided the way I was going to do this is I was going to just start from the beginning of Part 1 again and just watch it all the way through as one, almost like just one season of a show, 10 episodes long. And I did that, and watching it all together made me like Part 1 more because we didn't have to sit around and wait and go, was that it? Really? There was no wondering. Like anyone with half a brain kind of already knew that like it's Masters of the Universe. Of course, Prince Adam He-Man is not dead. They're not going to keep him dead. They can't. That would literally that there's no faster way to kill a Masters of the Universe show or movie or comic or anything than to just take He-Man right out of it permanently. There's no faster way to kill it. So I think anyone with half a brain knew that Prince Adam was going to come back. Spoiler alert, by the way. I'm pretty sure everyone who really cares about this has seen it, but this video is going to be riddled with spoilers. So yeah, be prepared. Anyway, so anyone with half a brain knew that Prince Adam slash He-Man was going to be fine. That he was going to come back. And before we go too much further into that, I want to go ahead and say I said this in my trailer review, and I agree with it still now. I don't think they did any course correction after part one. Part one came out, it got a ton of fan backlash. People were shitting all over it because they sidelined He-Man in favor of Teela predominantly, and then other supporting characters as well. And people shit on the show for that reason, myself included. Uh, I do not think that they did any. I don't think they made any changes to part two in response to all that backlash. I think the part two that is on Netflix right now for us to watch, I think that's the part two that we were always going to get. I don't think there was enough time in between the release of part one and the release of part two to go back and do these changes. And so, yeah, what overall is my opinion of it? Of part two, I like part two a lot more than I liked part one. And with part two attached as a whole 10 episode show series, season, whatever you want to call it, I'll give it a solid like 8 out of 10. It was not perfect, but it was watchable and I found it pretty entertaining. This time going through it, since Prince Adam is back and, He-Man actually being there and doing stuff is an option, I was much more engaged and I was much more paying attention to a lot of the other stuff going on. I noticed more how much I liked the voice cast. I think that they really shined, and I think they voice casted everyone appropriately. The only one that I had a little problem with was Mark Hamill as Skeletor. I get why they chose him because he has the Jokery voice that he can do, and he wasn't quite doing exactly the Joker, but it was pretty close. And to me, if you remember Skeletor, either from the old Filmation series from the 80s or the 2000X show, Skeletor had a much higher cackly voice. It wasn't as gravelly and deep and growly as Mark Hamill did it. But that was my only gripe with the voice cast. I thought the animation was beautiful, and speaking of animation, the fight scenes were really well done, both in terms of just like the characters fighting each other with their weapons and crazy anime style magical spell attacks and shit like that, stuff blowing up. I thought it was great. I thought the animation really shined during the scene where Adam called down the power without the sword and turned into like the Savage Hulk He-Man. Like that's basically what he was. Imagine He-Man, but he's even bigger, no harness on the chest, and he behaves like the Hulk. That's pretty much what he was. And I thought the animation for that was exceptional because that fucker couldn't move. Like especially the scene where I really was hoping he would pick up the axe. Like I was hoping it was going to be one of those things where, as time went on and he got a little bit more, uh, he had a little bit more time to get his footing with the Savage He-Man form. I thought he was going to kind of bring it under control a little bit. Like he was still going to be savage, but I thought he was going to bring it under control a little bit. When he picked up that axe, there's a part in the show where Savage He-Man picks up just an ordinary battle axe, and he just starts going to town with that thing. That was sick. That was dope. More of that. That was awesome. The whole thing was good. It was watchable. Uh, how can I put this as my like big gripe? Two things really. One, this show it feels like pandering a little bit to a lot of different groups. To more feminine people, it definitely feels pandering to them. There's a lot of a lot of the women are at the center of this story and their plight as women and what they've had to go through. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take that back. Like looking at Evelyn, the two women are Evelyn and Tila, and looking at their stories, like if you swap the genders, if you turn both Tila and Evelyn into boys, into men, it doesn't really change their story so much. Only a little bit with Evelyn. So Evelyn's story, she ends up kind of becoming the big bad of part two, the big enemy protagonist, and it's because she finally gets tired of Skeletor treating her like shit. So she uses manipulation and trickery, and she steals the power from him. And she becomes like fucking jacked muscles, like just ready to go, super empowered with the sword. Evelyn does that, and they do a lot of almost like oddly enough, with Mark Hamill playing Skeletor, they do almost like a Joker Harley Quinn kind of vibe, like, which is nothing new to the Skeletor Evelyn dynamic. He has always been really shitty to her and abusive and just offensive and insulting. But the moment it looks like she's gonna betray him, then he turns around and he sweet talks her back into serving him. In this series, she finally had enough and said, "No, fuck your bullshit," and started whooping his ass. So there was that dynamic going on, kind of, treading old ground, beating the dead horse of just like the typical story of a woman who's just in a relationship with an abusive guy and she just can't seem to get away. It's like we've seen that done so many times, namely with Joker and Harley Quinn. It's not, in terms of feminist issues, I want to say that one's not at the forefront anymore. That one's kind of like, it's obvious, leave the fucking guy. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the show is pandering. Gotta bring myself back around. The show is pandering. It's pandering to certain like social justice warrior, political correctness groups a little bit. Not so much as the first time it felt like, but in this one it's still there a little bit. There's even a scene where like Evelyn in her powered up form and Tila in her new powered up form are fighting what is really the final battle. And at the same time, off in the distance on the somewhere else, like He-Man and Skeletor are fighting sort of like their final battle, even though we find out it's not. And Skeletor says something along the lines of, it always had to come down this way. Skeletor versus He-Man, locked in the heat of combat. And He-Man just kind of grits his teeth, and he actually utters this line in the show. He utters, "It's not about us." And it's like, what the fuck do you mean it's not about you two? The whole toy line, the whole Filmation show, the whole mini comics, it's about you two. He-Man, main protagonist of Masters of the Universe. Skeletor, main antagonist of the Masters of the Universe franchise. Everyone else is a supporting character. And I get it. In this day and age, it's like, oh, so this super muscular, handsome, blonde, white dude is the main dude and everyone else is just a side character? Yeah! Yeah, that's what we're fucking dealing with here, people. You know why? Because this was made in the fucking 80s when that was the shit. So get on board the train or don't. I don't care either way, but we're like the idea of changing Masters of the Universe. When it happens across the board, it doesn't matter what franchise or property is. It could be Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Masters of the Universe, Doctor fucking Who. It doesn't fucking matter. When you go trying to change an established property to fit more with the current modern day times, it's either obviously it's gonna work or it's not. But what's gonna determine whether it works or not is, does this property that you're trying to change, does it already have a strong, loyal fan base who fell in love with it back at its inception? Because if that's the case, they're not going to like these changes and they're going to shit on your ideas. So you got to make your peace with that. Why can't we take things and adapt them and make them more, in line with the socio-political, economic vibe of 2021? Because they were not made in 2021 originally, and most of the fan base loves the way that they were made back in the 80s or the 90s, whatever the fuck it was. They love the way it was made back then. They love it for the way it was back then at its inception. So if you change it, you're, like I've said this before in other videos, if you change it, what you're doing is you're rolling the dice and you're saying, we're going to gamble, we're going to risk losing our already established fan base in the hopes of achieving new ones, a new fan base. Well, here's how that gets fucked up. By rolling those dice, you're damn near guaranteed to alienate, piss off, and lose your original fan base that you already have. But you are nowhere near guaranteed to get those new fans that you're striving to get so bad. So why don't you just shut the motherfuck up and stick with the old fan base that you already fucking have? How about that? How about you shut the fuck? Well, I don't really like the kind of fans that gravitate towards stuff like this, because like if it's 2021, if your idea of like a strong protagonist is a handsome blonde muscular white man, that just doesn't fit the vibe. Then doing something with Masters of the Universe is not for you. If that's not your thing, if you don't want to touch a property that involves a strong white protagonist, I don't know why the fuck you're making anything that has to do with Masters of the Universe. Because guess what? The main protagonist of Masters of the Universe is a strong, handsome, straight, muscular white dude. So if that's not your thing, if that's not your cup of tea, if you don't like that, fuck right off from Masters of the Universe. Go away. Go away, write your own story, write your own TV show, make your own video game, and you can have the main protagonist be whoever the fuck you want. But not in Masters of the Universe. Like, when he said that line in the show, I was literally like, what the fuck do you mean it's not about you two? He goes, it's not about us. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. The whole story is He-Man. He-Man, He-Man, motherfucking He-Man. Sorry about that. So, yeah. He-Man and Skeletor are the central characters. Everyone else is a supporting character. That being said, though, as I watched this and over the Thanksgiving break, I have seen some discussions about this part 2 and whatnot, and Revelation as a whole on both YouTube and Reddit and stuff like that. And people are kind of saying they don't really think when He-Man said that, like, it's not about us. Maybe he didn't mean that like totally, like in the grand scheme of things. Maybe he just meant like for this story, for this one Masters of the Universe story, Revelation, maybe for this one story it could just not be about them. And if that's the case, here's what I have to say about that. I'm kind of cool with it if it's for this one story. But now we're going to get into some of the problem. Well, first of all, even if it is just for this one story, I'm totally, if Teela wants to take center stage for this story, this one story, that's fine, They can kind of share it around. Even back in the Filmation show in the 80s, there would be episodes where like He-Man was around, but another character was really the center of the episode. They did that also in the 2000X series. There would be like He-Man, of course, was there. He's the main protagonist of the show. But they would do entire episodes or maybe even little 2 episode arcs that were based around another character, where that character's from. So that's fine to temporarily shift the focus to another character, totally fine, but not permanently. And now we're going to get into this other area that I feel like this revelation really failed, and that is that there was so much about this show that they wanted to keep secret and keep hidden from the fans and the audience. Uh, so like 2 things really. One, the fact that it was part 1 and part 2. It should have just been all 10 episodes. Here you go. That way, when we reach the end of episode 5 and Adam's stabbed, even though we're pretty sure he's coming back, we wouldn't have had to sit here and wait and be like, oh fuck, like that first half sucked. By separating it into 2 halves, you clearly created it. You created this dynamic in people's mind that part 1 sucks, part 2's not too bad. Whereas if you'd have released it all together as one series, which it really is, the general consensus would have probably been, it's all pretty damn good. It's pretty entertaining and pretty watchable. But by dividing it, you made it very clear which one is superior. So I think it should have all just been released as part 1 rather than try to leave on these cliffhangers and make us guess, about like, oh, what's going to happen in part 2. Just show us. Just fucking hand us just hand it to us. Spoon feed us our entertainment like we ask for in entertainment industry. The second thing here is, this is kind of big spoiler alert, so if you have not watched it, I suggest turning the video off now. But you've been warned. 3, 2, 1. There is a little cliffhanger teaser at the end of part 2 that suggests this is not the end for this iteration of He-Man. Like, we kind of all went into this as fans being told, like, Revelation is a spiritual continuation of the Filmation show, and it's going to serve the purpose of giving that show kind of a nice rounded out, cleaned up ending, where He-Man and Skeletor have their final battle, and yeah. Well, even though that's what we were kind of led to believe, I kind of think they're going to do more, because at the end of part 2, Skeletor is still alive, and he goes to visit Triclops and Trapjaw, who are leading this machine cult, techno machine cult, and they worship the motherboard, which is this, it presents itself in their like holy altar in Snake Mountain. It presents itself as this like metal mechanical bird, like hawk contraption, falcon contraption up on the wall. And Skeletor just kind of laughs at them, and he's like, this is what you worship? Okay, fine, you can worship it in pieces. And he raises his Havoc staff to blow it to bits, and when he does, we see the Falcon statue stop his attack, and then it starts to morph. It starts to contort and trap itself, and I was just like, techno cult, technology, the Horde, Hordak, let's fucking go. And then it morphed into almost like a very, very tall mechanical version of the Sorceress. Like, imagine if Skeletor, you know how they made a cyborg android of He-Man, Faker? Imagine if they made like a Sorceress version of Faker, but it was really tall, like as big as a 2-story house. That's what it looked like, and I was like, oh, that's not the Horde. Okay, never mind. Then the thing sends its like techno tentacles out, stabs into Skeletor, and starts infecting him with a techno-organic virus. And that's when my red flag went up again. I was like, techno-organic virus? Is this the Horde? And then at the very last scene, up on the cyborg Faker Sorceress, the tall android's head, a little compartment opens up, a little red projector pops out, and it makes a hologram of the Horde bat symbol over her head. And I lost my fucking mind because I was like, let's fucking go. This is big news. Because not only does it say that, hey, maybe this isn't the end. Maybe Revelation isn't this one self-contained thing that we've been led to believe it is. Maybe there's going to be more. And not only is there going to be more, it looks like they're going to do the piece of Masters of the Universe that we have always wanted to see redone with modern animation and modern technology, because the Eternia versus the Horde war is the shit. Like, so when I first got into Masters of the Universe, I didn't really want to watch the Filmation show. It's just a little dated for me. I've watched a lot more of it since then, just because I ran out of He-Man stuff to watch. But at first, that wasn't really my go-to. I turned on the 2000X show, and I watched all of the 2000X show. And then I was kind of bummed when it ended, because it really does. The ending of the 2000X show does not feel like an ending. It feels like they definitely meant to do more, and they did. Scott Toy Guru Nightlick and a bunch of other people have confessed that, like, there were extensive plans to take that show further. A lot of those plans was the inspiration for the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line. And the next phase of 2000X, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, was going to be the Horde. Whether or not She-Ra was going to show up, they weren't sure, because they weren't sure they could get the rights to do She-Ra, but they were going to fight the Horde. And with that, I started looking around for other He-Man stuff to read or watch, and I found the DC Comics He-Man Masters of the Universe Omnibus. And this starts off with a pretty nice generic story arc. It's an interesting He-Man versus Skeletor story arc. All the Masters of the Universe, He-Man, everyone, they've all had their minds wiped by Skeletor. They don't remember being Masters of the Universe. They don't remember fighting Skeletor, and they're all living these fake lives across Eternia. And they have to kind of like remember who they are and get back to who they are and defeat Skeletor. It starts off with that story, but then immediately after that, the motherfucking Horde invades. And that's when this shit gets dope, because basically the rest of this is Masters of the Universe versus the Horde. It's the Horde War. Or in this, it's called the Eternity War, but you get the idea. It's the Eternians versus all Eternians versus the Horde. That's pretty much the entirety of the DC Comics Masters of the Universe story. It's Masters of the Universe and Eternia versus the Horde. The Snake Men are in there somewhere. They're in there a little bit. King Hiss is in there, but it's not. I didn't really like it. I like the way the 2000X show did King Hiss way more than the DC Comics, but he's in there. And because he's in there in a different way, you can't really look at the comics as like a sequel to the 2000X show. You can kind of look at it as like a spiritual successor to the 2000X show, but not a real sequel. So that being said, I don't know about you, the rest of you guys out there that are Motu fans, but I have always wanted to see Masters of the Universe versus the Horde done up well in nice modern animation. And if we're going to get that, fucking more power to them. I will be right there ready to watch. So, with that teaser at the end that suggests there's going to be more to this He-Man show, that makes me even more likely to just kind of be like, okay, yeah, for this little Revelation series we have here, Teela can take center stage, because we're going to get more later, you know? But they, once again, in terms of, like I said, like, they kept too much secret. They weren't as forthcoming as they should have been. They were kind of giving us the impression that Masters of the Universe Revelation, it's a one and done thing, 10 episodes, that's all you get. Boom. There was no indication that it was going to lead into more shit. But now there is. So now I'm even more okay with it. You know? It was just kind of like, I think a lot of us Motu fans were thinking like, yo, if in terms of this Revelation show, if this is all we're going to get, just these 10 episodes and that's it, fuck this, because so much of it is based on Teela. You know, if 10 episodes was all we're getting, I want 10 episodes of He-Man, 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 He-Man. I know I just counted 5, but you know what I mean. But it looks like we're going to get more, and it looks like it's going to involve the Horde. and I guarantee you, like She-Ra and Etheria and all that stuff's gonna play into a role in it. So yeah, fucking sweet. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see though, because if they're really playing up this Revelation universe as a not a direct sequel to the Filmation show, but a spiritual sequel, we'll see how much of the Filmation lore they really adhere to. Because in the Filmation series, both He-Man and She-Ra, they'd already encountered the Horde many times. He-Man had anyway. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Maybe this will just be the first time the Horde's ever invaded Eternia. You know, in the Filmation show, the Horde, it was all the Horde and the good guy faction. I can't remember what they're called, but they were always fighting over the planet Etheria, which is this like sister planet in this other dimension. But I don't know if in the film, I'm not well versed in the Filmation stuff. I don't know if in the Filmation show the Horde ever actually the Horde. I know Hordak came to Eternia a couple of times. I don't know if the Horde ever actually invaded Eternia, but we might see it. We might see it on Netflix. That's what's awesome about this. So, what else? In terms of, like I said, the pandering. So there was the whole, like, they could have just revealed a bit more to us. They could have right from the get-go just given us all 10 episodes, and they could have also right from the get-go told us, like, hey, look, don't worry. If you weren't a fan of this 10 episode arc, there's gonna be more later, so just chill the fuck out. I'd have been fine. You know? Sweet. I'll be patient. But they didn't. They made us think that this was all we were getting. And then on top of that, choosing Kevin Smith as the showrunner, that was a cash grab, like almost a clickbait type of move, because everyone knows Kevin Smith as this, like, he's a nerdy fanboy, like so many of us are, but he's actually managed to make it somewhat big. Like, I'm not saying he's like some Academy Award winning director or anything like that, but you know, he's an actual filmmaker in Hollywood. Filmmaker, writer, producer, he does it all, and he actually has real big time Hollywood connections, and he's a nerdy fanboy like so many of us. So I feel like choosing him to be the showrunner, that was more like a clickbait type thing. It would be like, look, we got the biggest nerd in Hollywood to do this, guys. So you know it's in good hands. Hollywood, you're missing the point. It's not about whether or not it's not about if they're a nerd. It's about, are they a Motu nerd? Are they a He-Man and the Masters of the Universe nerd? That's what matters. And Kevin Smith is not. Like, no shame, nothing against him for not being. If Masters of the Universe is not his thing, then it's not his thing. But they just chose him because he has that reputation as like the ultimate nerd fanboy. And he's not a Motu fanboy. I feel like what they did was they hired Kevin Smith because they knew his name would draw attention to it amongst the nerd community, and then they just gave him this. This is like the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe encyclopedia. It says it's a character guide and world compendium. It's the encyclopedia. Every character, every weapon, every location, everything. It's all in here. It's all in this book. I feel like they just said, Kevin, we want you to run this shit. We'll pay you a lot of money. He said, dope. What do I need to do? And they were like, skim through this book and read as much as you can and learn as much as you can for like 3 months, and then we're going to get to work on the show. That's what it felt like, because they were using in the show, they used the right lingo and terminology. Like, they said a lot of stuff, like they referenced Point Dread, Preternia, Subternia, Grayskull Tower. Like, they said all these words and they referenced all these locations and different things that are part of the Motu mythos and lore, but they did not use them in any way that had been previously established in anything, whether it be the Filmation show, the 2000X show, the Classics toy line, the original toy line, the DC Comics, the original mini comics. None of them were used correctly. Like Preternia and Subternia being heaven and hell, or like not hell, but like the heaven and the underworld. That's not what the fuck they are. Preternia is just past. It's past Eternia. It's just it's history. Where they don't get to Preternia by dying, they get there by going back the fucking time. That's why it's called Preternia. I thought that was weird. They're like, Preternia is the equivalent of heaven, but it's at the end when you die. It's like, then why is it Preternia? Why isn't it post-Ternia? You know what I mean? And then Subternia kind of made sense, but Subternia was actually supposed to be just a physical location. It's where the Caligars lived. It's where the Spalians lived. It's where the snakes had like a hidden temple and shit. Yeah, in some iterations of it, but it was never the underworld ruled by Scareglow, who in this is pretty much like the Grim Reaper or kind of like Satan or the devil. Yeah, so it just seemed like Kevin Smith absorbed as much as he could from like the fan wikia, like the He-Man wikia page or like that book, and then he just like wrote some shit. They use the right words and lingo, but they don't use them in any single way that has ever been part of established He-Man lore. And that brings me to, I think, my biggest. Well, see, this is kind of hard to say now because we got that cliffhanger ending about the Horde. But I think my biggest gripe watching this was, this is entertaining. This is not too bad. This is good. This is not what we want. All right? It's not what we want. It's like, look, I used to be. I'll try to give you guys an analogy. I was in the Navy, and right when you finish like all your training and schooling, they have you write down like 3 locations in the world that you would like to be stationed, your top 3. All right? But you're not guaranteed to get any of them. At the end of the day, the Navy's going to put you where the Navy needs to put you. But you get to write down your top 3, okay? So, with the power of the internet, I think it's pretty easy to find out like in other words, what I'm trying to say is the Navy took into consideration what we wanted a little bit, if they could. So what I'm trying to say is with the power of the internet and how many people are constantly online expressing what they want, if they would just do a little digging and a little more research, it would be very easy to not even find out. Fuck the top 3. All right, fuck top 3. What do people want from the Motu Revelation show? What are the top 3 ideas that people are hoping we do with the Motu Revelation show? Fuck the top 3. Figure out what the number 1 is, and then just fucking do that. Do that. But see, that really deprives me as an artist and a creator of being able to like use my imagination and write out my. We don't give a fuck. We the fans don't give a fuck about you unless you're entertaining us. Now, that being said, Motu Revelation turned out to be mildly entertaining. I guess like 7 point somewhere between a 7.5 and an 8 out of 10. But it's still not. I'm gonna say 7.5. I'm gonna say 7.5. It gets a C grading, like a C plus, I'll say. But it's not our number 1. It's not even our number 2. You want to know what Motu fans' number 1 like idea? If you were gonna do a brand new long running Motu show, Motu fans, real Motu fans, I think what they would really want is for you to do something like the classics, the Motu Classics toy line lore. Adapt that into an animated show. Like when they went to make Motu Classics, like I said a few minutes ago, they they used what was intended to be the 3rd and 4th seasons of 2000X He-Man to kind of mold their lore and mythos for this toy line. So early on, the classics, the Motu Classics lore and the 2000X lore line up pretty well early on because they're essentially the same thing. And then, of course, 2000X ends and Classics continues on with what 2000X was going to do. And the thing about the Motu Classics toy line lore is that it adapted everything. And it did it well. There's no comic book series or TV show to watch where you can get it. The only way you can get it is from character bios for on like the backs of the toy packaging or in this encyclopedia guidebook. If you look at pretty much every single character, like here, if you look at Huntara, it doesn't just give her canon for like as one thing. It's like 1985 Filmation Pop animated series, Pop being Princess of Power. So there's her lore and bio for the Filmation stuff. But then down here it says 2008 Motu Classics. Here is her revamped, I don't know, rebooted lore for the Motu Classics toy line mythos and story. So You can also get pretty much the entire story of Motu from this by reading the classics bios on each character. But there's no real TV show or comic book series where you can get that. And I think most Motu fans would love to see it because they managed to take every iteration of He-Man, normal classic He-Man, and that's pretty much like Scott Toy Guru Nightlick does some videos on his channel where he talks about like he basically summarizes what seasons 3, 4, 5, 6, and even onto 7 of 2000X would have been, and he derives all of it from the classics lore that they ended up using for the toy line. And it's like, okay, so 2000X ended with the defeat of Serpos and King Hiss. Season 3, Horde invades, Sorceress dies. Skeletor uses Faker to usurp the power and frame He-Man. Season 4 is, more versus the Horde and shit like that. It's kind of a three-way battle between Skeletor and the Evil Warriors, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and Hordak and the Horde. And then we get into season and you go on and on. Eventually, they went out to space after defeating the Horde. Skeletor flees out into space, and He-Man goes out there and joins the Galactic Protectors. You remember from the more 90s, short-lived 90s He-Man cartoon where he was in space? They even managed to mix that and blend that into the Classics toy line canon. So the Classics toy line canon is the be-all, end-all Motu canon, in my opinion, because it encompasses everything. It's got the He-Man versus Skeletor on Eternia part. It's got the He-Man versus the Snake Men. That's fitted in there. It's got the Preternia stuff with King Grayskull and Hero, and the first time the Horde invaded and Grayskull defeated Hordak. It's got the return of Hordak and the Horde. It's got the return of the Snake Men first, the return of Hordak and the Horde, the death of the Sorceress, Teela becoming the new Sorceress. All of it. The He-Man in space with the Galactic Protectors. Later on down the road, brand new shit that's actually really interesting. He-Man as an adult, he's king. He has a son who becomes the new He-Man, but he's called Hero also, who fights Skeletor and Evil Lynn's weird time displaced teenage son Skeletine. Like, this is some wacky off the wall shit, but it sounds fun and entertaining, and it would make a great adaptation. That, I think, that one, the Classics canon, the Motu Classics toy line canon, is the be-all, end-all Motu canon, in my opinion. And that is, I think, people's number one choice. If they were like, what do you guys want from a Motu animated show? I would say, I want the Motu Classics toy line canon adapted into an animated show. And I want the content level to be PG-13. Like, pretty much exactly the level of content we saw in Revelation. There was some moments in Revelation where the humor was kind of cheesy. I remember Adam was like on his mom's like airplane vehicle for a minute, or not, he was as He-Man. But this is like, she knows everyone knows he's He-Man at this point in time, and he's like riding on her aircraft vehicle, and he's like, I'm gonna go kick Skeletor's ass, and she's like, we'll just be home for dinner, and I was like, ha! Fucking lame ass humor. It's lame. But there was mature content. The way that Evil Lynn in Revelation, the way that she sneaks the sword away from Skeletor, is she lures him into with sex. She says, I want to fuck, but right now with you all powered up in Skeletor God mode, like, if we fucked right now, you would kill me. So power down. Let's go over to the throne and let's fuck on the throne. And Skeletor goes along with it, and he sits down on the throne, and she kind of straddles him like she's gonna ride him, and then she steals the sword. And they even make sexual innuendos, like when she sits down and straddles him, he's just like, oh, thank you for taking my point. And then she's just like, that's not the point I came here to take. And then she steals the sword, and like, I was just like, oh, damn, all right, like, yeah, PG. It didn't show any like penetration, it didn't show any actual sex happening, but it was implicit, and they were making sexual innuendos. I was like, this is PG-13 level content. People got stabbed through the chest, you saw blood. That was what we're fucking talking about. Because yes, we fell in love with Masters of the Universe when, like, well, the OG fans fell in love with Masters of the Universe when they were like 5 to maybe 10 years old. But guess what? They're all in their 40s now, and I'm 29, and I want at least some PG-13 level content. Like what the kind of content we saw in Revelation was perfect. So if people were to be like, if Netflix or Mattel or whoever the fuck it is, if they were to be like, yo, Motu fan base, what is it you guys truly want to see in a Masters of the Universe like animated show? I would tell them, I want you to adapt the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line canon into an animated series. That would be perfect. And to be honest, they could kind of just bring 2000X back. You know, with 2000X, you got the first 2 seasons done and out of the way. Just bring 2000X back, start it up with season 3, and if you want to just have slightly different animation, that's fine. I don't think anyone's really going to give you a shit as long as the story is a continuation. As long as the story is a direct continuation, I don't think people are really going to care about the animation style as long as it's good. And the 2000X or the Revelation animation was good. So, I've ranted long enough about this. Masters of the Universe Revelation. Part 1, I still like just by itself. I still hate. Part two, I give an 8.5 out of 10. It's a solid B, maybe even a B plus. But judging it as a whole, like the whole 10 episodes of Masters of the Universe Revelation, I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Like I'm gonna give it like somewhere like a C plus. So because that first 5 episodes was annoying. So fuck it. You know what? And then with that teaser at the end about the Horde, I'm gonna go ahead and give it the 8. I'll give it the 8 out of 10. I'll give it the solid B. It's a B letter grade for me. Was not as good as it could be, but it showed promise. The animation was good. The voice acting was good. It was entertaining. Real quick, another quick side note. When I talk about having more adult content, there was a part in Revelation Part 2 where I thought this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say adult content. And I'm not talking about like sexual shit or anything. I'm talking like when Teela goes to become the sorceress, like her mom appears to her almost as kind of like a ghost or a spirit form and relays to her like, I gave you up because I'm the sorceress. I'm bound to this castle, and I wanted you to have a life outside of the castle with friends and family and people who love you. And if you just stayed here with me, you would never have had any of that. But she's like, but that's what you got to do now. Like, and then she shows her how that's another thing. The thing about the Revelation Part 2, they show how someone becomes the sorceress. There is this mystical pool of like cosmic energy down in the bottom of Castle Grayskull, and you have to kind of like submerge yourself in it and allow it to imbue you with the power of the sorceress. But once you do that, you become bound to Castle Grayskull. You cannot leave Castle Grayskull in human form. And I was kind of like watching it. I was kind of like, okay, like, this is what I mean. They're explaining how it's done. How does one become the sorceress? Magic? No, that's a bullshit answer. Even though it is still technically magic, they're showing us steps in a process that achieve the goal. Even though it's still just like I dip myself in a magical pool, it's kind of still just like bullshitting it out of your butthole. But there are steps. First, she has to get in the pool. Then she has to accept the power and have it imbue with her. And then, as a result, they're laying out steps in a process that have to occur in order for her to achieve this. And then they just shit all over it because here's what happens. She gets in the pool and she starts to let the power like imbue her and make her into the sorceress. But then she just kind of like tells the ghost of her mom, she's just like, I'm not going to bind myself to Castle Grayskull because I don't want to lose my friends. And then she still just becomes the new sorceress. She still becomes the new sorceress. And there's really only one explanation given as to how Teela is able to become the new sorceress but not be bound to Castle Grayskull. And that excuse is power of friendship. That's literally what she says. She says, "My friends give me the strength. My friends make me strong." In other words, The sorceress could have left Castle Grayskull anytime she wanted if she'd just had more friends. The power of friendship wins again, folks. That is some dumb, childish, juvenile, fuckity fuck shit. Anytime the solution to your dilemma is the power of friendship, fuck you. That's some dumb, childish shit. And this isn't even a show that's for little baby children. This is supposed to be the more adult He-Man show, where the content is a little more, aged up. And they're still going with how is Teela able to both become this new sorceress and leave Grayskull? Like the old sorceress could never do that. She had to stay within the walls of Grayskull. How can Teela leave? Oh, the power of friendship. Power of friendship. Yeah, that's how. Fuck you. Fuck you. Seriously, that's some dumb lame shit. That it really is. Like you go through the trouble of trying to kind of explain the magical process of becoming the sorceress, but then you just shit on it with the power of friendship. Like that's what I'm talking about. Explain shit. That's the difference between like something for children and something for people with a bit more of an adult mind. Children, you can. Why do things work that way? Because they do. Okay. An adult is going to go, why do things work that way? And if you say, because they do, they're going to go, I'm going to need to know a little bit more than that. I have questions, and I want those questions answered. And if you don't want to you don't want to answer those questions for me, I'm going to leave you in the dirt, and I'm going to go find someone else who will answer my questions and give me the answers that I'm looking for. So yeah, you can't just bullshit it out of your butthole like that. That's dumb, especially when it's supposed to be the He-Man show that's a little bit more for the adult fans. You're still bullshitting. The answer's still the power of friendship. Anyway, that's my last rant on this show. Overall, fuck man, this is hard. I don't know. It's somewhere between a C+ and a B- as an overall show. He-Man Revelation, Masters of the Universe Revelation. We'll see where it goes from here. That's not me saying that I don't want to see more. I do want to see more. I really do. I want to see where they go with this Horde thing. I want to see the Horde invade. I want to see Hordak. I want to see all that shit. And She-Ra, and I want to see it. So if Mattel, Netflix, if you guys make it, I'll watch it. But just know that you guys could have figured out what Motu fans' number one desire was for a He-Man show. You could have figured out what our number one desire was for a He-Man show, and you chose not to. And that's a big no-no in 2021. Like, you need to do what the fuck we tell you because we pay you. And if you irritate us and piss us off enough, we won't pay you. So, yeah, stop rolling dice. Stop taking all these risks with established properties. I don't have a problem with people taking risks, coming up with creative, brand new ideas. But when it comes to doing stuff with established properties and franchises, stop rolling dice. Stop taking risks. Shut the fuck up. Do what we say. Make us our shit, and then fuck off. So that's that. Anyway, everyone else who watched Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2, please leave some comments below. Let's get a discussion started. Anyone who wants to shit on me for anything that I said in this video, please leave some comments below. Let's get a discussion started. If you did like this video, I know it was long, and if you stayed with me through the whole thing, I really thank you. And if you liked it, and if you stayed to the end, I'm guessing you did, please hit the like button. That really helps the channel. If you'd like to help the channel even more, check out some of my other videos, maybe subscribe. But other than that, I will see you guys next time.